if you're not really being honest with yourself about the amount of work that you're putting in, you can't go ahead and fix or remedy the situation. You can't assess the game tape and get better. What's up, y'all? This is episode number 2 of the FTG Fill the Gap podcast. I am your host, Cody Allen. For those of you that don't know me, you'll probably call me Cody Allen. For those of you that do know me, I just go by Cody. My entire life, especially when I started playing sports, people always call me by my first and last name. It's weird because I have 2 first names basically as a name, but it's always been Cody Allen. When everybody that's played sports, they know, like, all right, you get called by your last name. Hey, Torres, hey, come out here. Hey, Alisea, come out here. My buddies from high school. But nobody's ever said, hey, Allen. I guess it's because it's a first name, but it's just always been like a thing, a weird thing. And that's kind of how I came up with like the Cody Allen, which is that's a whole different other story that we'll get into someday. But I guess that today is the first, we'll call it real episode. The first episode that we did was just me kind of introducing myself, who I was, why the hell I'm doing this, which is going to continue to mold and shape because why the hell am I doing this, I guess you'd say. But this episode, I'm getting done a few days before we want to air. It's taking me a little bit longer to get this one done because I have been busy as hell. Which kind of just got me start to think. Like I've always been a type that said that I was busy. I got a bunch of stuff going on right now with the companies, launching a new brand, also buying and selling a home. So I'm all over the place, right? But busy is something that I've always said, right? I've always been, I'm too busy to do this. I'm too busy to do that. Or the reason why I'm not doing something is because I'm busy. And obviously, at times that's true. But for the most part, you're never too busy. It's literally just breaks down to prioritization. But all of this kind of ties into really what I wanted to talk about today. For those of you guys that are watching, if you watched it from the last time I did the podcast in my office, today I'm doing it in my garage gym. We're playing with some different aesthetics. I don't know. We'll see which one I like better. I just figured, why not? This is like a very big, expensive studio set. Why not use it? Anyway, today I'm talking about being busy. I'm talking about hard work. I'm talking about what we deserve. In today's day and age, we'll call it, people think that they are owed a ton of things. Why? Just for being born, just for being alive, just for being awake, just for showing up. People feel like they are owed something. I am here to tell you that in my experience in my life, playing sports, business, relationships, you're never gonna get something given to you just because you showed up. There are no participation trophies when it comes to, let's say, like a relationship. Everybody's always like, I deserve this, I deserve that. And it's like, well, all right, well, what are you bringing to the table, number one, and why do you deserve this? Because I know right now that if in my relationship, I just showed up every single day and mailed it in and didn't really put any effort into it, eventually I don't deserve to have anything reciprocated towards me. Yet, a lot of people do feel this way when it comes to relationships. They always think like, oh, you have to put in effort. If he could, he would. If she could, she would, whatever it might be. But when it comes to accolades in life, when it comes to work, when it comes to our jobs, so much on social media talks about how we should be being paid more for this and paid more, and my time is worth this. And it's like, all right, cool. If your time is worth that, show me. If your time is worth that, put in the work, because you can't just show up. So many people, myself at times in my life, a lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I dislike, a lot of people that I do like, do this. We show up to work, we kind of like mail it in. Mail it in, I mean, just kind of go through the motions. Are you really giving 100% effort? Are you really doing as well as you could? A lot of people, especially with this work from home shit, they're just dragging their feet through so much work. They're so mad that we have to go back to work. A lot of people have to go back to the office and back to work because they knew that they were just taking naps in the middle of the day and they were just fucking sitting on their ass and they were watching Netflix the entire time while they're working. I did that shit too, right? So that's how I know that people were doing it, especially if I'm doing it. But the reason why I talk about all this shit is because it'd be one thing if a lot of people were like, I deserve X, Y, and Z, but I'm not putting in the work to get it, right? But a lot of people are like, I work so hard, I busted my ass doing this, busted my ass doing that, and I'm not getting it done. And not only am I not getting it done, I'm not reaping the benefits of somebody who is putting in the hard work. That doesn't happen anymore. Often it's like, I feel like I should be getting paid more at my job because I work so hard. But do you? Like, do you really work that hard? There are a lot of people who are out there who are willing to work harder than you. That's just statement. That's just fact. It is what it is. So when I worked in banking, I was fresh out of playing college ball, and one of the things that always had me standing out, or one of the reasons why I always stood out at my job, was because I was always willing to go above and beyond, and I was always trying to outwork the person next to me. I was always trying to outwork the Cody from yesterday, right? And a lot of people just didn't have that drive and tenacity, and so it made me stand out for sure. I got that from sports. I got that because in the game, we'll call football, or we'll just talk about football. I'm gonna call it football. In football, you're exposed. You got 53 and a quarter yards or whatever it is by 100 yards, and everybody's staring at you, right? So everybody can see exactly how hard you're working on the football field. There's no hiding out there. So you get exposed really quickly. Putting in the hard work right next to the guy next to you to try to outwork him, it's something that just gets ingrained into you as an athlete, and it's always gonna be in you. It's inside. If you were ever an athlete, you gotta pull it out sometimes. But I basically took the same concepts that I was the same concepts that I learned as being an athlete, and I applied them to my work life. Take the same concepts I applied them to a relationship. Same concepts apply them to being a friend, son, whatever the hell it is might be. But so many people in life, and this is one of the reasons why I like to hire people who are in athletics, get passed up because they're not really willing to put in the hard work, and sometimes they don't even really know what hard work is. So showing up every day, working at the bank and doing that stuff, that was nothing compared to the shit that I had to do when I played football. A lot of people don't realize, or a lot of people haven't been in that situation where it's like, I am busting my ass, my legs feel like they're about to fall off. I got somebody across from me trying to knock me on my ass and trying to read the play. I'm absolutely tired. That's a lot easier than showing up in a suit, tie crooked, doing whatever the hell it was when I was working at the bank. So I think a lot of people lack perspective on what hard work is, and I think that has a lot to do with why people think that they are owed something for the little amount of work or effort that they're putting in. When I say this shit, I kind of bring it back to sports in a sense that you have to be very honest with yourself about the amount of work that you're putting in. You think that you're owed something, right? If I told you that there was X amount of work, effort, struggle that had to go in to get that, and you told me, well, I do put that in, and you don't receive the benefits of that, it's because you're not being honest with yourself. So, like I said before, as an athlete, one of the things that we constantly do is I've watched hundreds, if not thousands, for sure thousands of hours of game film. That is on myself, on the opponent, on my teammates, whatever the hell it might be, but definitely on myself. And so the reason why I do that is so that you can assess, analyze based off the facts that are there. So I can go back to a play or in a game and be like, hey coach, like I know that I filled the gap. I know that I filled the gap. Pull up the game film. He's like, Cody, you didn't fill the gap. You spilled the block when you should have forced edge the block, and you fucked up, right? But I can say till I'm blue in the face, oh no, I know I filled the gap. I did this, I did that, did this, did that. But the reason why we film ourselves when we play sports and review game film is so that we can assess the fact of what happened, like the truth in what happened, and get better at it. So we don't continually make the same mistakes. Because if you take that and translate it over to the workspace, the work world, a lot of people don't have a shot in hell because they're not being honest with themselves about what they're actually doing. And so what I mean by that is basically you come out here and you're like, Cody, I'm putting in as much work as I can. I'm not getting that promotion. And it's like, well, if you're really honest about it, like you kind of spend like 2 hours on your phone. I'm not, what is it, Gary V or whatever. I'm like, oh, don't waste your time on your phone and this and that. And how productive are you? And how much time do you waste on apps and Instagram and Netflix or whatever? But in reality, it's like, all right, cool. You spend 2 hours on your phone. You take 15 minutes longer than you could on your lunch break. And so it's like, and then half the time you kind of bullshit on your sales calls. So it's like, if you're not really being honest with yourself about the amount of work that you're putting in, then you can't go ahead and fix or remedy the situation. You can't assess the game tape and get better. This matters when you're talking about your relationship, your diet, your nutrition, how good of a son you are, how good of a daughter you are, whatever the hell it is. Bringing it over to like relationships. I, as most people, but myself definitely included in my past relationships, I've always been one to be like, oh, well, like she wasn't doing this, she wasn't doing that, deflecting, you know. I never will talk ill on people that I've dated in the past. I just won't. I think that that's in bad taste. And when you talk about things that you say, there always needs to be context. So it's like, I don't need to be talking to someone that wasn't a part of the situation, that doesn't really know it, right? But I would constantly, like she wasn't ready to do this, or she wasn't ready to do that, or I couldn't get over this, or whatever, without getting into the details. But in reality, I hadn't taken a lot of time to really break down my relationships and my actions in my relationships and say, hey, the reason why X, Y, and Z didn't work out was because I wasn't doing everything that I needed to do on my end. I wasn't being honest with the amount of work or effort that I was putting into my relationships. And I think a lot of people wander through life with the mentality that they were wronged, that they did everything that they could to make the relationship work, and it was the other person wasn't giving them what they needed. And sometimes that is true. But at the end of the day, you really got to look at yourself and you got to say, hey, I could have done things vastly differently, whatever it is, in order to have a more successful relationship. I just wasn't willing to. And that was me in a lot of my past relationships. My relationship today, vastly different. And that is because I will say, looked at the game film. I looked back at my relationships. I was very honest with myself. I was very honest with my therapist. And I was like, hey, you know what? This is a situation now being removed. And that's another thing. It's a lot easier when you're out of the situation. It's a lot easier when you're removed. It's a lot easier when there's no emotions attached to it. But I was like, you know what? Like somebody I dated in the past, she constantly got the short end of the stick. You know, she constantly wasn't made a priority. Was that because I was a bad guy? No. Was it because I was out here to like maliciously be like, oh, I'm not going to put in effort on this? No. Was I also making excuses as to why I acted in that way? No, but that was the reality of the situation. So with my therapist, I talked to her and I was just like, hey, let's try to analyze why I acted in a particular way in a past relationship. Why didn't I put in enough effort, basically? I'm not going to say that if I had put in more effort, then it would have worked out, because I don't believe so, and I don't believe that we're supposed to be together, or whatever fate or whatever my horoscope said for this week. But I really wasn't putting in enough effort. And it's one thing to just say that that's the problem, right? All right, Cody, like put in more effort. It's another thing to say like, hey, like, why weren't you doing that? So for me, I had been in a relationship prior to the one that I'm talking about where I put in so much effort and it didn't work out for other reasons. But it made me think like the next relationship that I go into, like I'm not gonna put in as much effort. Whether I actively knew that and thought that, I didn't at the time. It was going to affect the way that I acted regardless. So the current relationship that I'm in now, if I had never addressed with my therapist, with thinking, with planning, the things that had happened to me in my previous relationships, my relationship today would not be working. Point blank, it is what it is. I love my girlfriend to death, but if I didn't work on myself, she couldn't do enough to make me a quote unquote like good boyfriend, right? But what I'm getting at, people, is being honest with yourself about who, what, where, when, why you are where you are, how, what you're actually doing and what your actions are. It's sometimes fucking scary because you need to have a real adult conversation with yourself sometimes, being like, hey, like I'm lacking at this, or I like to like say that I put in all this work and this effort or whatever, but maybe I'm not a great girlfriend. Maybe I'm not adhering to the needs of my boyfriend, right? Or other girlfriend, whatever the fuck it might be. Once you do that, you can really break down and assess how to remedy the situation and get the ultimate goal and outcome that you want. I bring this back to relationships because that's where I've seen the biggest change in my life. I was somebody that, like I said, in that previous relationship, I wasn't putting in enough effort. Not only was I not putting in enough effort, I wasn't taking other people's and that other person's feelings into consideration as much as I should have. We can talk about till we're blue in the face, like, should you have broken up a long time before that and whatever, and it's like, obviously the details are a little, that's a different thing. But in reality, this one issue that I had in my relationship was basically based on the fact that I wasn't being honest with my readiness to be in a relationship and my readiness to put in the work. And so a lot of people say, well, like, well, all relationships shouldn't be work. And it's like, well, a relationship and things in your life and your ability to overcome objections and things like that are always going to be work until you address the root issue. And so me in my life, I have a ton of issues that I've had to address, right? And as soon as I did that, it's not a coincidence that things in my life started becoming so much more clear, a lot less stress, and a lot easier. Like, it's very easy. My relationship today is very easy in a sense that, I mean, she is on my ass sometimes, but easy in a sense that, like, hey, if I fuck up or if I'm not being as attentive as I should be, I could be like, hey, you know what? Like, I need to be doing this. She made me shake my hand the other day. She's like, hey, we need to go on more dates. And I was like, I could be like, oh, well, you know, we did this day or this that day. And it's like, no. Like, I really should make more of time and effort to go on dates. Especially somebody like me that I'm doing the most. If you know me like personally, you know I got a whole lot of shit going on. But that's something that I always want to be mindful of, their time, somebody else's time, your other's partner's time and their needs, because if you don't, it's really easy to slip by the wayside. And I have a buddy, Joe, that we had a talk like last week, and he had like a very good saying, we'll say, and was that somebody in your life, somebody that you love, is always going to be at the exception of your actions, right? You just can't make it the same person every single time. Whether that be your friends, your family, your partner, your parents, your children. You know what? Like, for example, let's say you work your ass off, you have a good paying job, you always want to just provide for your family, but you're always missing your son's baseball games. It's like, all right, don't miss the games, but if you do, miss them sparingly when it's necessary, because you don't want the same person to always feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. That is the same exact thing when it comes to just like your relationship in general. You don't want every time that you have some spare time to be sent and be like, oh, I'm gonna go out with my boys. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go travel here, go travel there, go on boys weekend here. Because eventually your partner, your wife or whatever, they're gonna get sick of it, you know? They're gonna get sick of being taken for granted. So you can't continually make the same person an exception, and the exception or whatever, however you guys want to phrase it. However you said it, it stuck with me for years. But eventually, and the shittiest part about it, eventually, obviously that person's gonna get fed up. They're gonna sit with it. They need to voice their complaints or whatever it is. But eventually, that person is gonna want to leave. They're gonna want to do something else. They're gonna be like, I want a divorce, or I want to break up, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, why? And that is the part where people struggle with, because they have a very hard time with just being like, hey, you know what? It comes in two steps, right? Hey, you know what? Like, I haven't been as attentive, or I continually miss out on shit that's important to you. That's one thing, right? Most people don't even get that far. They're like, oh, like what the hell? Like, we're always doing stuff. They lie to themselves. Number two, you actually have putting together action plans, action items. I got to start not missing shit. So, long story short, long story 20 minutes long or whatever it is. Being honest with yourself about your actions, about what you can do to better situations, is the only way to succeed at whatever the hell it is in life that you're trying to succeed at. And that's just the starting point. I'm telling you guys right now that start with the smallest thing in your life, and it will get dramatically better if you're honest with yourself about your actions, your effort, what you're putting in to make this better or work. And then once you do that, figure out how to change that for the better. If you're not willing to do that, then maybe this isn't the relationship you should be in. If you're not willing to put in the extra work at work, maybe this isn't the job for you. And to bring it back to sports, if you're not willing to put in the extra work to make sure that make sure you're a better football player, a better quarterback, you're not willing to put in the extra work, then maybe that's not the sport for you. Or just accept with how mediocre the outcome is going to be. So, I don't know, y'all, that wraps it up for episode 2. Like I said, we'll be dropping these every other week on Wednesday. Next one coming up in a couple days. And we're going to stay on this tune. Take things from my life. Maybe I'll throw some names out there and shit like that. Take things from my life, how they translate into possibly your life, and all the things that I've fucked up at, and hopefully you guys can learn from the mistakes. So follow me on Instagram. We got YouTube, Spotify, streaming on every channel now. And that is all.